Did you hear about the fish that went bankrupt? He found himself a little short on scale. Now, speaking of scales and fish, let's dive into our topic. Today, we're going to talk about a subject that's sure to reel you in: the art and science of breeding maggots for fishing. Now, before you wrinkle your nose and click away, hear me out. Maggots, those little squirming larvae, are like gold dust to fish. They're like the irresistible chocolate cake at a party, the last slice of pizza on a Saturday night. They're so tempting that even the most stubborn fish can't resist them. And that's why they make such fantastic bait. But why breed your own, you ask? Well, there are a few reasons. First off, breeding your own maggots is cost-effective. You can literally turn your kitchen scraps into a bait goldmine. No more shelling out your hard-earned money on store-bought bait. Secondly, when you breed your own maggots, you know exactly what they've been fed on. This is important because the diet of the maggot can influence the smell and taste, making them even more irresistible to fish. And last but not least, there's the satisfaction of knowing that you're not only a great angler, but also a maggot farmer. Imagine the bragging rights on the riverbank when you land that whopper and tell your mates that the secret was your homebred maggots. So, if you're a fishing enthusiast looking for a new challenge, or if you're just trying to save some money on bait, breeding your own maggots could be just the ticket. It's not as difficult or as gross as you might think, and the rewards can be fantastic. So if you're ready to save some money and become the most popular person on the riverbank, stick around. So you're ready to become a maggot mogul? Fantastic, let's start with the basics. First off, it's important to understand what a maggot is and what it isn't. Despite their less than glamorous reputation, maggots are incredibly fascinating creatures. In the simplest terms, a maggot is the larval stage of a fly. That's right, those pesky flies buzzing around your picnic are the proud parents of our little wigglers. The life cycle of a maggot starts with a tiny egg, often laid in rotting organic matter. In about a day, that egg hatches and out pops a hungry little maggot, ready to chow down on whatever it was born into. Over the course of several days to a couple of weeks, depending on the species of fly and the conditions, this maggot will eat and grow, eventually forming a protective case around itself, known as a pupa. Inside this pupa, the magic happens. The maggot transforms, emerging as a fully fledged fly, ready to start the cycle all over again. Temperature and environment play crucial roles in this process. Flies are cold-blooded creatures, meaning their body temperature is influenced by their surroundings. The warmer the environment, the faster the life cycle progresses. So, if you're trying to breed maggots in the middle of winter, you might find yourself waiting a while. On the flip side, in the heat of summer, those little critters will be popping out left, right, and center. The environment is also key. Flies prefer to lay their eggs in damp, rotting organic matter. Think old fruit, vegetables, or meat. It might not smell great to us, but to a fly, it's the perfect nursery. Now you might be thinking, why on earth would I want to breed maggots? Well, as any angler will tell you, maggots are like fishy gold. They're one of the best baits you can use, attracting a wide range of fish species. Plus, breeding your own is a great way to save some money and ensure you've always got a supply on hand. Understanding these basics will make the breeding process a lot easier. Now, let's move on to the actual breeding process. Now that we know what we're dealing with, let's get down to the nitty-gritty of breeding these little wrigglers. Firstly, we need to set up the breeding environment. This is where the magic happens, or rather, this is where the maggots happen. You'll need a container. This could be a simple plastic bin, but make sure it has a tight-fitting lid and some ventilation holes. You don't want your little maggot community to suffocate, do you? Inside the container, you'll want to place a layer of organic matter. This could be anything from old fruit and veg to meat scraps. But remember, the fresher the better. Once you've got your breeding environment set up, it's time for the flies to get busy. You might be thinking, but I don't have any flies. Well, don't worry, they will come. It's like that famous line from that movie about the baseball field in the cornfield. If you build it, they will come. And come they will. So you've got your container, you've got your organic matter, and you've got your flies. What's next? Well, now you wait. The flies will lay their eggs in the organic matter. These tiny white specks will soon hatch into tiny white maggots. Now here's where the maintenance part comes in. You'll want to make sure the container stays moist, but not too wet. Think about the consistency of a well-made sponge cake. You also want to ensure that the temperature is just right. Not too hot, not too cold. Goldilocks would be proud. If it gets too hot, the maggots could cook, and if it gets too cold, they could freeze. Neither of these scenarios is ideal for breeding purposes. Then comes the feeding. You'll want to add fresh organic matter to the container every few days. This keeps the maggots well fed and happy. Remember, a happy maggot is a productive maggot, and by productive, I mean it will grow and multiply, which is exactly what you want. Now you might be wondering, when will I know if my maggots are ready? Well, here's a little trick. When the maggots are ready to pupate, they will start to turn a darker color and crawl to the sides of the container. This is your cue to harvest them, but don't worry, if you miss this window, they'll just turn into flies and start the cycle all over again. And there you have it, a step-by-step guide to breeding maggots. Now, let's summarize. Breeding maggots might seem a little daunting at first, but remember, practice makes perfect. Just like baking a cake or riding a bike, the more you do it, the easier it gets. And before you know it, you'll be a maggot breeding maestro. Let's take a quick walk back through our breeding steps. First things first, setting up your maggot farm. Remember, you can use a simple plastic container, but it needs to be clean. Hygiene is crucial in every step of this process. We want our maggots healthy and happy, ready to attract those fish. Next, we talked about getting your hands on some meat. This is the bait, the lure, the irresistible treat that gets our flies buzzing. The key here is to ensure it's raw and fresh. The fresher, the better. And don't worry, no need to splurge on filet mignon. A simple piece of chicken or beef works perfectly. Once the flies have done their business and laid their eggs, it's all about maintaining the right environment. You want to keep your container in a shaded, cool area. Too much heat or direct sunlight can be harmful to the larvae. And remember, keep the lid on. We want to keep our maggots in and any potential predators out. The final step is the harvest. Once your maggots have reached the right size, it's time to collect them. But remember, always do it with care. We don't want to injure our little wrigglers. They're the stars of the show after all. Throughout this process, remember the importance of cleanliness. It's paramount to keep everything sanitary, ensuring the health and vitality of your maggots. And don't forget, patience is key. This isn't an overnight process, but the rewards are worth the wait. So that's all there is to it. With a bit of patience and care, you'll be breeding your own maggots in no time. And remember, the fish are waiting. Before we wrap up, let's quickly recap what we've learned today. We've dived into an unusual yet fascinating world, the world of maggot breeding for fishing. We've established the importance of these tiny creatures in the fishing world. Their wriggly, irresistible charm proves irresistible to fish, making them a prime bait choice. We've also delved into the basic knowledge needed to start your very own maggot farm. It's not as glamorous as a caviar factory, but it's certainly more exciting. Next, we walked through the breeding process step by step, from sourcing your first batch, maintaining the right environment, to harvesting your wriggly gold. It's a process that requires patience and dedication, but the rewards are bountiful. And finally, we've summarized all this information, streamlining it into an easy-to-follow guide so you can start your maggot breeding journey with confidence. So get out there, start breeding, and reel in those fish. And remember, you're not just a fisherman, you're a maggot mogul.